The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over Santa Rosa, a quaint city nestled in Sonoma County, California. Dr. Evan Evans, a seasoned physician at 52, glanced at his watch as he bustled out of an examination room. He was a respected figure in the suburban community, his independent clinic, established just a few years prior, steadily attracting a loyal patient base. "Sarah," Dr. Evans called out as he approached the nurse's station. "Mrs. Hernandez left this behind." He handed a prescription eyeglass case to the nurse on duty. "I'll call her right away," Sarah replied, tucking the case into a desk drawer. As Dr. Evans turned to return to his examination room, his gaze swept across the waiting area, now mostly deserted as closing time neared. His eyes settled on a pair seated in a quiet corner, a stocky man in a blue polo shirt and a young girl cloaked in a red hoodie. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Mark," Dr. Evans called out, approaching them with a warm, welcoming smile. "Mark Hallen, isn't it? I wasn't aware you had an appointment today." Mark rose, extending his hand in greeting. "Dr. Evans, it's good to see you. We're neighbors, Mark. Feel free to call me Evan when we're outside the clinic." He then turned his attention to the young girl, who kept her eyes resolutely fixed on the floor. "And this must be Emily. I don't believe we've had the pleasure of a proper introduction, though I've certainly seen you around the neighborhood." Emily offered only a slight nod in acknowledgement, her gaze never leaving the floor. "We'll be with you shortly," Dr. Evans assured them. "I just need to finish up some paperwork." Back in the sanctuary of his examination room, Dr. Evans settled behind his desk, organizing the charts from his last patient. A moment later, Sarah Delgado, his diligent nurse assistant, entered. She began her methodical routine of sanitizing the examination table and equipment, preparing for the next consultation. "Dr. Evans," Sarah began in a lowered, concerned voice, "there's something rather unsettling about that father and daughter in the waiting room." Dr. Evans looked up from his paperwork, intrigued. "What do you mean, Sarah?" Sarah's brow furrowed as she meticulously wiped down the ultrasound machine. "When I was taking the girl's vitals, her father was incredibly overbearing. He wouldn't allow her to speak, not even to give her own name. He insisted on answering every question for her." She shook her head, a troubled expression on her face. "I had to repeatedly remind him that I needed to hear directly from her. And the girl, Emily, she refuses to make eye contact, not even for a second." Dr. Evans leaned back in his chair, considering Sarah's words. "I know them, Sarah. They live just 3 houses down from me. Mark can be a bit authoritative at times. Some fathers are just like that." "I'm Mexican too, Dr. Evans," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "And this isn't a cultural thing. This feels different. Something else is going on here." She paused, then added with a slight shrug, "But you know them better than I do. Perhaps this is just their family dynamic." She handed him the girl's chart, and Dr. Evans' eyes widened as he reviewed the listed symptoms. 14 years old, and presenting with pregnancy symptoms, he murmured, a knot forming in his stomach. Sarah nodded grimly. "That's precisely why I'm so concerned." "Send them in, Sarah," Dr. Evans instructed, straightening his white coat and composing his expression to mask his unease. The door creaked open, and Mark guided Emily into the room, his hand resting firmly on her shoulder. The girl moved with a palpable tension, as if she were treading on eggshells, her red hoodie hanging loosely on her small frame. "Thank you for seeing us, Doctor," Mark said, settling into the chair beside the examination table, "especially at this late hour." "Of course," Dr. Evans replied, his voice calm despite his inner turmoil. "What seems to be the problem?" Mark cleared his throat, a look of discomfort flickering across his face. It's not easy to say this, doctor, but my daughter, Emily, is pregnant." Despite having seen it on the chart, hearing the words spoken aloud so bluntly made Dr. Evans' stomach tighten. He looked at Emily, who remained silent, her gaze fixed on her hands, which were folded neatly in her lap. "I see," Dr. Evans said carefully, choosing his words with precision. "Emily, how have you been feeling lately?" Before she could utter a sound, Mark interjected, his voice overriding hers. "She's been experiencing morning sickness, fatigue, and more recently, she's been complaining of abdominal pain." Dr. Evans maintained his focus on Emily. Emily, would you prefer to answer these questions yourself? The girl gave a barely perceptible nod, a silent plea in her eyes. And how did this pregnancy occur? Dr. Evans asked, directing his question once again to Emily. Mark, however, answered for her. She has a boyfriend. We prefer not to discuss him. His tone was sharp, making it unequivocally clear that the subject was closed. Mark continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. We need this to remain strictly confidential. Absolutely no one can know about this. Not our neighbors, not anyone. Patient confidentiality is a standard protocol, Mr. Hallen, Dr. Evans assured him, though he found the man's intense emphasis rather odd. I am bound by ethics and law. I cannot discuss any patient's case with others. Good. Mark nodded, seemingly satisfied. Dr. Evans turned his attention back to Emily. I'd like to perform an ultrasound, Emily, to check on the baby and determine how far along you are in your pregnancy. Is that okay with you? She nodded again, still avoiding his gaze. Sarah will help you onto the examination table, Dr. Evans said, preparing the ultrasound machine. You'll need to lift your shirt just above your abdomen. Sarah gently guided Emily to the table. The girl winced noticeably as she lay back. Does that hurt? Sarah asked softly, her voice filled with compassion. Emily nodded silently. The abdominal pain has been getting progressively worse. Mark explained from his chair, his voice devoid of emotion. Dr. Evans applied the cool gel to Emily's abdomen, noting how she flinched involuntarily at his touch. He moved the transducer gently across her belly, his eyes fixed intently on the monitor. What he saw made him pause, his breath catching in his throat. He began, adjusting the machine to get a clearer view. Emily, it appears you are approximately 28 weeks pregnant. Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. That can't be right. It hasn't been that long. Dr. Evans looked at him sharply. Have you taken her to an obstetrician before this visit? No, Mark replied curtly. This is our first doctor visit regarding this matter. Dr. Evans continued to examine the ultrasound image, a frown deepening on his face. It's a girl, he announced. Then his expression became more troubled. But I'm seeing some concerning signs. Her abdomen doesn't match the typical growth patterns for 28 weeks. This suggests what we call intrauterine growth restriction, or IUGR. What does that mean? Mark asked, a hint of anxiety creeping into his voice. It means the baby isn't growing at a normal rate inside the womb, Dr. Evans explained patiently. This can occur due to various factors, such as problems with the placenta, maternal health issues, or underlying fetal conditions. Dr. Evans moved the transducer again, his brow furrowed in concentration as he monitored the screen. I'm also detecting an irregular fetal heartbeat. He turned to face Mark directly, his gaze serious. Mr. Hallen, I strongly recommend that you take Emily to the hospital immediately. She requires specialized care that I simply cannot provide here in my clinic. Mark's face darkened with anger. Hospital? Why can't you just give her some medicine? This situation requires advanced monitoring and potentially intervention, Dr. Evans explained, maintaining his composure. The hospital has the necessary equipment and specialists to monitor the baby's development properly. They can perform Doppler studies to assess blood flow to the baby and meticulously check for any organ under development. Mark looked resistant, his jaw clenched, but Dr. Evans continued firmly, his voice unwavering. I can give you a prescription for prenatal vitamins, calcium, and folic acid to help with her nutrition, but that alone is not sufficient. She absolutely needs to be seen at the hospital. He quickly wrote out the prescription and handed it to Mark. The pharmacy next door is still open. You can fill this prescription while Nurse Sarah helps clean up Emily. Mark glanced hesitantly between the doctor and his daughter, his indecision palpable. She'll be fine, Dr. Evans assured him. We'll just clean off the gel and print out the ultrasound images for you. She'll join you at the pharmacy in a few minutes. Mark reluctantly took the prescription and left the room, casting one last, uneasy look back at Emily before closing the door behind him. As soon as Mark was gone, Sarah began gently wiping the gel from Emily's abdomen. "You're going to be okay, sweetie," she said softly, her voice soothing. Suddenly, Emily's eyes welled with tears, and they began to stream down her pale cheeks. "She kicks when she hears his voice," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "I hate that she likes him." Dr. Evans and Sarah exchanged alarmed glances, the weight of Emily's ambiguous words hanging heavy in the sterile air. "Emily," Dr. Evans said carefully, his voice gentle, "what do you mean by that?" But Emily had retreated back into her shell of silence, her momentary openness vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Dr. Evans tried to make sense of her cryptic statement. Perhaps she was simply upset about the pregnancy and was projecting those complex feelings on her father. Or maybe Mark had been angry about the pregnancy, and she was expressing her resentment toward his reaction. "What's done is done," he said gently, trying to offer some comfort. "Your father brought you here because he cares about your health. Now, we need to focus on making sure that you and the baby are okay. That's why it's so incredibly important that you go to the hospital right away." He handed Emily the printed ultrasound image, and she took it, her gaze fixed on the black and white picture, which to her eyes likely looked more like an abstract blur than anything recognizable. Through the glass panel in the door, Dr. Evans could see Mark returning from the pharmacy. The fleeting moment for a private conversation was lost. Sarah helped Emily sit up, and they prepared to leave. Dr. Evans watched as Mark collected his daughter, his hand once again firmly on her shoulder as they exited the clinic. After Mark and Emily had departed, Sarah returned to the examination room, her face etched with trouble as she gathered the remaining ultrasound printouts. 9 o'clock, she announced, glancing at her watch. "That's it for today, right?" Dr. Evans nodded, still deeply disturbed by Emily's cryptic and unsettling statement. "Yes, they were our last patients." Sarah began shutting down the ultrasound machine, her movements brisk and efficient, but her expression remained pensive. "That was strange, don't you think?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "The girl hiding her pregnancy for 28 weeks? And what she said when her father left the room, it was just odd." "I know," Dr. Evans agreed, leaning wearily against his desk. "It was definitely unusual." "What do you think she meant by it?" Sarah pressed. "About the baby kicking when she hears his voice, and her saying she hates that the baby likes him?" Dr. Evans ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and confusion. "I'm assuming she must have hidden the pregnancy from her father all this time. That's likely why he only just brought her in now. Maybe he was angry when he finally found out, and that's why she's expressing those complicated feelings." Sarah, however, wasn't convinced. But she specifically said the baby kicks when she hears her father's voice, and she doesn't like that. "Doesn't that seem incredibly odd to you?" "It could be a tumultuous collision of teenage hormones and pregnancy hormones," Dr. Evans suggested, though the explanation felt insufficient even to his own ears. "Mood swings and emotional volatility are unfortunately common in both situations." Sarah nodded slowly, though a shadow of doubt still lingered in her eyes. "I truly hope they go to the hospital, just like you told them to." "Me too, Sarah," Dr. Evans echoed, his voice heavy with concern. "That baby desperately needs proper monitoring." They finished closing up the clinic, systematically turning off lights and securely locking cabinets. The rest of the staff had already departed for the evening, leaving just the two of them to secure the building. They walked out together into the cool night air, the parking lot now nearly empty, a stark contrast to the bustling activity of the day. "Have a good night, Doctor," Sarah said, heading toward her car. "You too, Sarah. See you tomorrow." Dr. Evans climbed into his sedan, the engine humming softly to life as he pulled out of the parking lot. His mind, however, kept replaying the unsettling examination, meticulously searching for clues in the strained interaction between father and daughter. Something felt profoundly off, deeply wrong, but he couldn't quite place his finger on it. As he turned into his familiar neighborhood, the streetlights cast long, eerie shadows on the quiet suburban street. He instinctively slowed as he approached the Hallen residence, just 3 houses away from his own. Their car was parked in the driveway. "They didn't go to the hospital," he muttered to himself, a flicker of serious concern igniting in his chest. He continued driving the short distance to his house, pulled into his own driveway, and shut off the engine. Sitting in the enveloping darkness of his car, he debated with himself. Maybe they hadn't fully understood the gravity of the situation, the irregular heartbeat, the severe growth restriction. These weren't minor issues, especially for a 14-year-old expectant mother. He should just go inside, have his dinner, and call a night. It wasn't his professional responsibility to chase down patients who chose to ignore his medical advice. But Emily's haunting words echoed relentlessly in his mind. She kicks when she hears his voice. I hate that she likes him. With a weary sigh, Dr. Evans got out of his car and walked back down the dimly lit street to the Hallen house. The lights were on inside, a warm, inviting glow emanating from the windows, a stark contrast to the cold dread settling in his stomach. He hesitated for a moment on the doorstep, then knocked firmly on the front door. After a moment that stretched into an eternity, the door swung open, and Mark stood there, surprise flashing briefly across his face before he quickly composed it into a neutral, unreadable expression. Dr. Evans, is everything okay? I was just checking in, Dr. Evans said, trying to keep his tone casual and unthreatening. I noticed your car was here, and I was naturally concerned since I had strongly recommended you take Emily to the hospital right away. Mark's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a subtle tightening around his eyes. Ah, yes. Thank you for your concern, Doctor. Emily has gone to the hospital with her mother. I just stayed behind to finish up some urgent work. Dr. Evans blinked, caught completely off guard by this unexpected information. This was the very first mention of Emily's mother being involved, or even present in the picture. I see, he said carefully, trying to process this new development. That's good to hear. I was genuinely worried about the baby's condition. Yes, well, she's in good hands now, Mark said, his tone clipped and dismissive. Thank you for stopping by, Doctor, but it's getting rather late, and, as I said, I have work to finish. Of course, Dr. Evans nodded, sensing the finality in Mark's voice. Sorry to disturb you. Good night, Mr. Hallen. Good night. The door shut firmly behind him, leaving Dr. Evans standing alone on the porch with a nagging, undeniable unease churning in his gut. As he made his way back to his own home, Mark's explanation replayed over and over in his mind. He could only hope, for Emily's sake, that it had been the truth. Inside his kitchen, Dr. Evans opened the refrigerator and stared blankly at its contents, his appetite completely diminished by the persistent, nagging sense that something was terribly wrong with the young girl. He grabbed some leftovers from the previous night's dinner, chicken pasta, and placed it absently in the microwave. As he waited for his food to heat, Sarah's earlier concerns echoed in his mind. The disturbing way Mark had controlled the entire conversation, aggressively answering questions clearly meant for Emily. The girl's persistent, unnerving reluctance to make eye contact, her cryptic, chilling comment about the baby, and now, Mark's sudden claim that Emily had gone to the hospital with her mother. The microwave beeped, signaling his dinner was ready, but Dr. Evans barely noticed. A stark realization suddenly struck him with the force of a physical blow. Despite living just 3 houses away from the Hallen family for over a year, he had rarely, if ever, seen Emily or her mother outside the confines of their home. He knew Mark had a daughter, of course, but their interactions had always been limited to the occasional perfunctory wave from the driveway or brief, superficial exchanges at neighborhood gatherings, always with Mark attending alone. As for Mark's wife, he couldn't even recall the last time he'd actually seen her. He took his plate of now lukewarm pasta to his home office, a small, cluttered room with a desk, a computer, and bookshelves lined with imposing medical texts. Setting his dinner aside, untouched, he opened his laptop and navigated to Facebook. This probably crosses several professional boundaries, he muttered to himself, a sense of unease prickling at his conscience. But something just isn't right here. He searched for Mark Hallen and quickly found his profile. Mark's privacy settings were surprisingly minimal, allowing Dr. Evans to browse through his photos and publicly available information. He scrolled through Mark's friend list, meticulously searching for someone who might be Emily's mother. Diane Rivera, he read aloud, the name ringing faintly familiar, as if he'd heard it somewhere long ago in a distant past. Her profile picture tugged at something deep within his memory, a fleeting, elusive recognition. The woman's face bore a subtle, undeniable resemblance to Emily, and he was almost certain he had seen her before, somewhere, sometime in the past. He clicked on her profile, scanning through the limited information visible to the public. Diane's page had very few recent photos featuring either Mark or Emily. In fact, as Dr. Evans scrolled further down her timeline, he noticed a distinct and prolonged absence of any family photos for several years. There were pictures of Diane at work events, smiling with friends, but none with her daughter. If they're divorced, that would certainly make sense, he mused aloud, trying to piece together the puzzle. But then, why on earth would Mark say Emily went to the hospital with her? Dr. Evans knew he was stepping far outside established professional boundaries by investigating his patient's family in this clandestine manner. But his profound concern for Emily's well-being and potentially her very safety overrode any lingering hesitation. He clicked on a messenger icon and began typing a carefully worded message to Diane. "Hello, Ms. Rivera. I sincerely apologize for contacting you this way, but I'm Dr. Evan Evans, a family physician who saw your daughter, Emily, today. I just wanted to check in and see how the hospital visit is going. Again, I am truly sorry for this intrusion." He hesitated for a long moment before hitting send, acutely aware that this unsolicited message might anger her or cause unnecessary confusion and alarm. But his deep-seated concern for Emily ultimately won out, and he sent the message. Dr. Evans ate his dinner distractedly, his eyes occasionally glancing at the computer screen, hoping for a response. None came. He cleaned his plate, changed into more comfortable clothes, and prepared for bed, checking his phone one last time before finally turning in for the night. As he lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, his thoughts racing, his phone suddenly chimed with a notification. He grabbed it quickly, his heart pounding, and saw a message from Diane Rivera. "What hospital visit? Is something wrong with Emily?" Before he could even begin to type a response, his phone started ringing, a Facebook call from Diane. He sat up abruptly in bed and answered. "Hello, Dr. Evans speaking." "Doctor, what's going on?" Diane's voice was tense, laced with palpable worry and fear. "What do you mean about a hospital visit? I'm not at any hospital with Emily." Dr. Evans' stomach sank, a cold dread washing over him. "Ms. Rivera, I saw your daughter in my clinic this evening. She was brought in by her father, Mark. She's pregnant, Ms. Rivera, approximately 28 weeks along." There was a sharp, audible intake of breath on the other end of the line. That's impossible," Diane whispered, her voice trembling. "I haven't seen Emily in almost 3 years. Mark and I have been divorced for 10 years. He has full custody, and I'm not allowed anywhere near her." Dr. Evans closed his eyes, the disparate pieces of the disturbing puzzle beginning to fall grimly into place. "Ms. Rivera, I need to explain the situation to you very clearly. Emily came to my clinic with Mark this evening. She is in the 3rd trimester of her pregnancy and is suffering from intrauterine growth restriction, which, as I mentioned, means the fetus isn't growing at a normal rate. This can happen due to various problems, such as issues with the placenta, maternal health complications, or underlying fetal conditions." He paused, taking a deep breath to steady his own nerves. "I also detected an irregular fetal heartbeat. I strongly advised them to go to the hospital immediately so that specialists could perform Doppler studies and accurately assess the baby's development. If there's any organ under development, particularly in the lungs and brain, there are critical treatments that could help, but time is of the essence. It could become too late very quickly." Diane was silent for a long, agonizing moment before finally responding. "Oh my God," she eventually said, her voice breaking with raw emotion. "My baby, she's only 14. How could this happen? Who did this to her?" "Mark said she has a boyfriend," Dr. Evans replied, though he was now seriously questioning everything Mark had told him that evening. "I don't know what to do," Diane said, sounding completely overwhelmed and distraught. "I want to see her right now, but I'm not allowed anywhere near her. The restraining order." She broke off, her voice choked with tears. "Please, doctor, Please make sure she's okay. If she's not, you have to call the police. I don't care if Mark reports me for violating the order. This is my daughter we're talking about. I understand, Ms. Rivera, Dr. Evans assured her. But we need to be extremely careful. Emily is in a very delicate condition, and we don't want to trigger premature labor by causing her any additional stress. You're right, Diane agreed reluctantly, her voice still thick with unshed tears. What will you do? I'll check on her again, Ms. Rivera, Dr. Evans promised. And I'll keep you updated. For now, it's probably best if you stay where you are. After ending the call, Dr. Evans immediately accessed his clinic's electronic medical records from his laptop. He pulled up the ultrasound images from Emily's examination, studying them with intense, meticulous care. The images unequivocally confirmed his initial, troubling assessment. Restricted growth, potentially compromised placental function, and deeply concerning indications of decreased blood flow to the fetus. This meant that significantly less oxygen and fewer vital nutrients were reaching the baby, a critical situation that could rapidly deteriorate with devastating consequences. The clock on his bedside table read 10:15 p.m. It was undeniably late for house calls, but the man had clearly and deliberately lied to him while his daughter was in desperate need of urgent medical attention. Dr. Evans decided that this couldn't wait until morning. By then, Mark might be at work, or he might conjure up another elaborate excuse to avoid seeking help. Dr. Evans quickly changed back into his street clothes and headed out of his house once more. The night had grown considerably cooler, a light, ethereal fog beginning to settle over the quiet suburban neighborhood. The Hallen house stood silhouetted starkly against the inky night sky, its windows still illuminated, casting an eerie glow. He approached the front door with a newfound determination, fully prepared to confront Mark about his blatant lie and to insist, unequivocally, that Emily receive immediate and comprehensive medical care. He knocked firmly on the door, mentally rehearsing what he would say when Mark inevitably answered. But when the door creaked open, it wasn't Mark who stood in the doorway. It was Emily. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise at the sight of him. "Dr. Evans," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder, back into the oppressive silence of the house. "Emily," he said gently, his voice soft but firm. "Did you go to the hospital?" She shook her head, her fingers fidgeting anxiously with the hem of her oversized hoodie. "Emily, I need you to tell me the truth," Dr. Evans said, keeping his voice low and calm. "What's really happening here? Why did you hide your pregnancy for so long?" Emily opened her mouth to speak, but before she could utter a single word, Mark's booming voice echoed from inside the house. "Who is it, Emily? Is it the delivery guy? What's taking so long?" Pure, unadulterated fear flashed across Emily's face. "Please go," she whispered urgently, already trying to close the door. "Please." Dr. Evans instinctively put his hand on the door to stop it from closing completely. "Emily, I can help you. Please, let me help you." "I can't," she breathed, her voice barely audible, as she pushed the door shut with all her might. Dr. Evans stood alone on the porch, utterly torn. Technically, he had fulfilled his professional duty. He had clearly informed Mark of the significant risks involved and had strongly urged him to seek immediate hospital care for Emily. He couldn't physically force them to follow his medical advice. But something about that house felt profoundly, deeply wrong, and he simply couldn't bring himself to walk away. He had made a solemn promise to Diane, and that promise still held immense weight. As he turned to leave, his heart heavy with indecision, the front door swung open again. This time, Mark stood in the doorway, his expression dark and menacing with ill-concealed annoyance. "Dr. Evans," he said, his voice tight with anger, "why do you keep coming to my house? It's extremely late in the evening." "Mr. Hallen," Dr. Evans began, struggling to maintain a professional and composed tone, "I am deeply concerned about Emily's condition. You explicitly told me that she had gone to the hospital with her mother, but I've just learned that is not true." Mark's jaw tightened ominously. "You've been checking up on me. Who I choose to take my daughter to see is absolutely none of your business. As her physician, her health is my business, Mr. Hallen," Dr. Evans countered firmly. The baby's condition is serious, potentially life-threatening. Delaying treatment could lead to severe complications or far worse. Mark glared at him, his eyes filled with unconcealed hostility, about to respond, when a light suddenly came on in the neighbor's house next door. A curtain twitched, someone clearly watching the late-night confrontation unfolding on the porch. Mark's demeanor shifted abruptly, his anger momentarily replaced by a veneer of civility. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside," he suggested, his voice suddenly, unnervingly conciliatory. "There's no need to disturb the entire neighborhood." Dr. Evans hesitated for a moment, then nodded curtly. Mark stepped back, allowing him to enter the house. The living room was sparsely and impersonally decorated with a worn, threadbare couch, a simple coffee table, and a large television mounted on the wall. Emily sat precariously on the edge of the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes fixed steadfastly on the floor. "Emily," Dr. Evans said gently, his voice filled with concern. "How are you feeling?" Mark interrupted sharply before she could answer. "She's fine, just tired. Pregnant women get tired, right, doctor?" Dr. Evans turned to face Mark directly, his patience wearing thin. "Mr. Hallen, you need to understand the profound seriousness of this situation. The ultrasound clearly showed intrauterine growth restriction and a dangerously irregular fetal heartbeat. These are critical conditions that require immediate and specialized medical attention." "And we'll get that attention," Mark replied, his tone placating but his eyes cold and calculating. "First thing tomorrow morning." "Why wait?" Dr. Evans pressed, his voice firm. "Why not tonight?" "Because it's late," Mark said, gesturing dismissively at the clock on the wall. "Emily needs her rest. She's completely exhausted, and dragging her to an emergency room where we'll undoubtedly sit for hours isn't what she needs right now. The baby could be in severe distress, Mr. Hallen," Dr. Evans argued, his concern mounting. "Every single hour counts in a critical situation like this." Mark's expression hardened, his eyes glinting with a chilling indifference. "The baby won't die overnight." Dr. Evans flinched at the sheer callousness of the statement. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang, a sudden, unexpected intrusion. Mark's shoulders visibly relaxed slightly. "That'll be the delivery. I ordered some dinner for us." He turned to Emily. "Wait here with the doctor, Emily. I'll go get the food." As Mark walked to the door, Dr. Evans took the opportunity to move closer to Emily. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice barely a whisper. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Emily glanced furtively towards the door where her father was paying the delivery person, fumbling for spare change in his pockets. Then, quickly, almost imperceptibly, Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out several folded photographs. She thrust them urgently into Dr. Evans' hand just as Mark turned back towards them. Dr. Evans discreetly slipped the photos into his jacket pocket without looking at them. Emily leaned closer and whispered, her voice trembling, more in bedroom. "I'll help you, Emily," Dr. Evans promised, keeping his voice low and reassuring. "You're being incredibly brave." Mark returned with a pizza box, a forced smile on his face. "What are you two talking about?" "Emily was just telling me she's hungry," Dr. Evans improvised smoothly, thinking quickly on his feet. "Which is good. She definitely needs proper nutrition." "See, I'm a good father," Mark said, placing the pizza unceremoniously on the coffee table. "I always make sure she eats well." He turned to Dr. Evans, his demeanor shifting abruptly from defensive to overtly dismissive. "Now, I appreciate your concern, doctor, I really do, but it's getting very late. As you said yourself, pregnant women need their rest. If she doesn't get proper sleep, that would be bad for the baby too, wouldn't it?" Dr. Evans recognized the clear, unmistakable dismissal in Mark's tone. "Yes, rest is important," he conceded, choosing his words carefully. "But so is immediate medical care. And she'll get it, first thing tomorrow morning," Mark insisted, his voice leaving no room for further argument. "I promise." Seeing no way to push the issue further without dangerously escalating the already tense situation, Dr. Evans reluctantly headed towards the door. "I'll check in with you tomorrow to see how the hospital visit went," he said, his words carrying a clear, unspoken message that he wouldn't let this drop. "Of course," Mark replied, his smile chillingly insincere, not reaching his cold, empty eyes. "Good night, Doctor." As Dr. Evans left, he glanced back through the window and saw Mark and Emily sitting at the table, the pizza box open between them. Mark was talking animatedly, his gestures expansive, while Emily sat motionless, her eyes downcast, a silent, captive audience. Once safely back in the sanctuary of his own house, Dr. Evans quickly pulled the photographs from his pocket. What he saw made his blood run cold, a wave of nausea and disbelief washing over him. There were 4 photographs, each showing Emily in various horrifying stages of undress, on what appeared to be a bed, with Mark himself clearly and sickeningly visible in the images. The photos documented unspeakable abuse in graphic, stomach-churning detail. "My God," Dr. Evans whispered, his hands shaking uncontrollably with a potent mixture of rage and profound disgust. He quickly placed the photos face down on his desk, unable to bear looking at them any longer. Emily's words from the clinic echoed in his mind with a horrifying, sickening new context. "She kicks when she hears his voice. I hate that she likes him." The devastating truth crashed down on him like a physical weight, stealing his breath. Mark wasn't just Emily's father. He was the father of her unborn baby. There was no boyfriend. There was only a monstrous predator and his innocent victim, living just 3 houses away, hidden in plain sight. Dr. Evans reached for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed 911. "Emergency services," came the calm, professional voice of the dispatcher. "What's your emergency?" "I need to report child abuse and endangerment," Dr. Evans said, his voice remarkably steady despite the tumultuous storm of emotions raging inside him. "A 14-year-old girl who is 28 weeks pregnant. The father is the abuser, and the girl and her unborn child are in desperate need of immediate medical attention." While waiting for the police to arrive, Dr. Evans' mind raced. The photographs in his possession were damning, irrefutable evidence, but he needed to ensure they reached the proper authorities safely and securely. He also needed to alert Diane to what was happening, to the horrifying truth he had uncovered. He quickly took photos of the printed photographs with his phone, making absolutely sure the digital images were clear enough to serve as crucial evidence if the originals were somehow lost or destroyed. Then, he sent them to Diane through Facebook Messenger, along with a brief, urgent message explaining that he had contacted the police and they were already on their way to Mark's house. His phone rang almost immediately. It was Diane calling back. "I'm coming there right now," she said, her voice raw with a potent mixture of anguish and fury. "That monster! I'll kill him myself." "Diane, please, you must let the police handle this," Dr. Evans urged, his voice firm but understanding. "They're on their way. The most important thing right now is getting Emily safely out of that house and to a hospital." "How could this happen?" Diane sobbed, her voice breaking. "How could he do this to his own daughter? I knew something was wrong when he fought so hard for custody, but I never, ever imagined. I never thought he would." "I'm so incredibly sorry, Diane," Dr. Evans said, at a complete loss for more comforting words in the face of such unimaginable horror. "But Emily reached out for help tonight. She was incredibly brave, and now, finally, we can get her away from him." "I'm still coming," Diane insisted, her voice filled with a mother's fierce determination. "I need to be there for my daughter." "Of course," Dr. Evans agreed. "Just please, I implore you, let the police do their job first." After hanging up, Dr. Evans paced his living room restlessly, checking the window every few minutes for any sign of the police cruiser's arrival. It felt like hours had passed, though his clock told him only a mere 20 minutes had elapsed since his urgent call to 911. Finally, he saw the flashing blue and red lights of police cruisers turning onto their street, moving slowly and deliberately, without sirens, a clear tactical approach designed to avoid alerting Mark to their presence. Dr. Evans hurried outside to meet them. 3 police cars parked a short distance from the Hallen house, their presence a stark symbol of intervention. 6 officers emerged, their movements purposeful and efficient, and Dr. Evans approached the one who appeared to be in charge. Dr. Evan Evans, he introduced himself, his voice calm and steady. "I made the call." The officer nodded curtly. "Detective Morales, you have evidence of sexual abuse." Dr. Evans handed over the horrifying photographs. "These are given to me by the victim, Emily Hallen, less than an hour ago. She indicated that there are more photographs like these inside the house." Detective Morales examined the photos, his expression hardening into a grim mask of revulsion and anger. "And the girl is pregnant?" "Yes, 28 weeks along. There are extremely serious medical concerns for both her and the baby. She needs comprehensive hospital care immediately." Another officer approached them. "The house is quiet, Detective. Lights are still on inside." "All right," Detective Morales said, handing the damning photos to another officer, who carefully placed them in an evidence bag. "Dr. Evans, please wait here. We'll approach the house." The officers moved with practiced precision toward the Hallen residence, positioning themselves strategically around the property to cover all possible exits. Detective Morales and another officer went directly to the front door, while the others covered potential escape routes at the back and sides of the house. Dr. Evans watched, his heart pounding in his chest, as Detective Morales knocked firmly on the door. No response. He knocked again, louder this time, his voice booming as he announced, "Police presence. Open the door." Still nothing. The officers exchanged tense, uneasy glances. Detective Morales spoke urgently into his radio, and moments later, the officers positioned at the back of the house confirmed that they could see movement inside, but no one was approaching the front door. After several more unsuccessful attempts to get a response, Detective Morales made a decisive call. "We're going in," he announced to his team, his voice resolute. "Possible endangered minor inside." One officer brought forward a heavy battering ram. They positioned it carefully against the door, and with 3 solid, resounding blows, the door frame splintered and gave way with a sickening crack. Dr. Evans remained at the perimeter as instructed, straining to see what was happening inside the now-breached house. The officers entered cautiously, their voices calling out, "Police! Santa Rosa Police Department! Show yourselves!" Neighbors had begun to emerge hesitantly from their homes, drawn by the undeniable commotion and the flashing lights that cut through the night. The couple who lived next door to Mark, an older pair who had watched the earlier tense confrontation from their window, approached Dr. Evans, their faces etched with concern. "What's happening?" the woman asked, clutching her robe tightly closed at the neck, her voice trembling slightly. Before Dr. Evans could even attempt to answer, shouts erupted from inside the house, followed by the sound of officers rushing urgently upstairs. Then came more shouting, this time from outside the house. "He's on the roof!" someone yelled, their voice filled with alarm. Dr. Evans looked up in horror to see Mark climbing precariously out of an attic window onto the steep, treacherous roof above the garage. He was dragging a terrified Emily behind him, his grip cruelly tight on her wrist as she struggled desperately to maintain her balance on the slippery, sloping surface. "Stay back," Mark yelled maniacally as he saw the officers gathering below. "I'll push her off if you come any closer. We're a family. If I'm going down, we're all going down together." Emily was crying hysterically, her free hand instinctively covering her pregnant belly in a desperate, protective gesture. "Please don't," she begged, her terrified voice carrying clearly in the still night air. "Please, somebody help me." The police below immediately backed off, their voices urgent as they radioed for additional support. Dr. Evans heard them requesting paramedics and what sounded like an inflatable landing pad. "Mark," Dr. Evans called out, stepping forward impulsively despite an officer's stern warning to stay back. "Don't do this. The police have the photographs. They know everything." Mark's face contorted with unbridled rage. "She gave you those pictures. You little bitch," he spat venomously at Emily, his voice filled with pure hatred. "After everything I've done for you, you don't deserve to live." A car screeched to a halt at the edge of the police perimeter. Diane leapt out, rushing frantically toward the house before an officer quickly intercepted her. "That's my daughter," she screamed, fighting desperately against the officer's restraining hold. "Emily, I'm here, baby. I'm here." Emily's tear-streaked face turned instinctively towards the sound of her mother's voice. "Mom." The momentary distraction was all Mark needed. He pulled Emily cruelly closer to the perilous edge of the roof. The officers below had managed to quickly deploy a large inflatable safety cushion, expertly positioning it directly beneath where Mark and Emily stood precariously. "Mark Hallen," Detective Morales called out through a megaphone, his voice amplified and authoritative. "This is Detective Morales with the Santa Rosa Police Department. Release the girl immediately and surrender yourself. There's nowhere for you to go." Dr. Evans could see other officers now carefully positioning themselves at the attic window, clearly ready to apprehend Mark from behind, but Mark, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal, saw them too. "Stay back," he shouted again, yanking Emily even closer to the edge, her feet dangerously close to slipping. "I'll jump with her if I have to." Diane, in a surge of maternal desperation, broke free from the officer who was trying to hold her back. "Please, Mark, she's our daughter. Don't hurt her. She's mine." Mark snarled, his voice laced with a possessive madness. "You never deserved her. You never deserved either of them." In that terrifying moment, Dr. Evans realized with a chilling horror that Mark was referring to both Emily and her unborn child as his possessions, his to control, his to ultimately destroy. The officers at the attic window began to emerge cautiously onto the roof. Mark, seeing his escape route completely blocked and the authorities closing in on him from all sides, made his desperate, horrifying decision. "No!" Dr. Evans shouted, his voice filled with anguish, but it was too late. Mark shoved Emily violently off the roof. She fell with a terrified, piercing scream, landing with a sickening thud on the inflatable safety cushion below. Officers immediately rushed to her aid, while others surged relentlessly towards Mark, who attempted to jump in a different direction in a futile effort to escape. He didn't make it far. Two officers tackled him mid-leap, bringing him down hard onto the unforgiving roof surface with enough force to knock the wind completely out of him. They quickly and efficiently handcuffed him and began the difficult process of bringing him down safely, though with considerably less gentleness than they had shown Emily. Dr. Evans rushed to where Emily lay on the safety cushion, paramedics already swarming around her, checking her vital signs with urgent efficiency. "I'm her doctor," he explained breathlessly, kneeling beside her. "Emily, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, tears streaming down her pale, terrified face. "The baby," she whispered, her voice weak and trembling. "Is the baby okay?" Dr. Evans placed a gentle, reassuring hand on her abdomen, feeling for any movement. "Let's get you to the hospital to make absolutely sure, Emily, but I think she's going to be just fine. You were so incredibly brave, Emily. So very, very brave." The night air was now filled with the chaotic flashing lights of police cars and ambulances, a stark visual testament to the horror that had unfolded. Officers led a handcuffed, struggling Mark towards a waiting cruiser, his face contorted with impotent rage and hatred. As they passed Diane, who stood anxiously watching the paramedics tend to Emily, Mark spat contemptuously in her direction. "This is all your fault," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "You were never a real mother to her." Diane lunged forward, her carefully maintained composure finally shattering into a million pieces. "You monster! What you did to our daughter! You're not even human." An officer quickly stepped between them, gently guiding Diane back while his colleagues pushed Mark forcefully towards the police car. He should rot in prison forever. Diane sobbed hysterically as Dr. Evans approached her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I always knew something was deeply wrong with him, but this is beyond anything I could have ever imagined." "You couldn't have known, Diane," Dr. Evans said gently, his voice filled with compassion. "Predators like Mark are absolute experts at hiding their true, monstrous nature." The paramedics had carefully stabilized Emily on a stretcher and were preparing to load her into the waiting ambulance. Dr. Evans gently guided Diane towards them. "She needs you now, Diane," he said softly, Focus on Emily, not on him. Diane nodded, wiping the tears from her face with a trembling hand as she approached the stretcher. When Emily saw her mother, her eyes filled with fresh tears, tears of relief and overwhelming emotion. "Mom," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand towards her. "I missed you so much." Diane took her daughter's fragile hand, kissing it tenderly as tears streamed down her own face. "I missed you too, baby, so much. I'm here now, and I'm never, ever leaving you again." Dr. Evans approached the lead paramedic. "I'm her physician. I'd like to accompany you to the hospital, if that's all right." The paramedic nodded. "We could definitely use your input on her condition, doctor." As they carefully loaded Emily into the ambulance, Detective Morales approached Dr. Evans. "Doctor, we'll need to speak with you at the hospital. And you too, ma'am," he added, addressing Diane. "But for now, please go with your daughter. We'll meet you there." Diane climbed into the ambulance alongside Emily, never once letting go of her daughter's hand. Dr. Evans followed, sitting opposite them as the paramedics continued to diligently monitor Emily's vital signs. In the ambulance, Dr. Evans used his stethoscope to listen carefully to the baby's heartbeat. "The heartbeat is still irregular, Emily, but it's strong," he told her, offering a small measure of reassurance. "The fall doesn't seem to have caused any immediate trauma, but the hospital will perform a much more thorough examination to be certain." The ambulance sped through the quiet, sleeping streets of Santa Rosa, its siren wailing urgently, a mournful sound in the stillness of the night. Dr. Evans watched as Diane gently stroked Emily's hair, whispering soft words of comfort and reassurance. Despite the painful years of forced separation, their bond, the unbreakable connection between mother and daughter, remained undeniably strong, a poignant testament to the enduring resilience of family ties in the face of monstrous, unthinkable interference. They arrived at the hospital, where an obstetric emergency team was already assembled and waiting for them. Dr. Evans briefly and concisely explained the complex and horrific situation to the attending physician, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a renowned specialist in high-risk pregnancies. 28 weeks with severe Hajar and fetal arrhythmia, he summarized quickly as they wheeled Emily into an examination room. Also, potential trauma from a significant fall, though she fortunately landed on an inflatable safety cushion. Dr. Vasquez nodded, her expression serious and focused. "We'll take it from here, Dr. Evans. Thank you for your quick and decisive action tonight. You may very well have saved 2 lives." As the highly skilled medical team began their urgent work, Dr. Evans joined a distraught Diane in the sterile, impersonal waiting area. Detective Morales arrived shortly after, accompanied by another officer and a compassionate-looking woman who introduced herself as Rebecca Miller from Child Protective Services. "We need to understand exactly what happened tonight," Detective Morales began, his voice grave. "Dr. Evans, please start from the very beginning." Dr. Evans recounted the harrowing events of the evening, from Emily's unsettling visit to his clinic to his growing, undeniable concerns and his eventual, horrifying discovery of the truth through the photographs Emily had bravely given him. "Mark claimed the baby's father was a boyfriend," he explained, his voice still laced with disbelief at the man's audacity. But Emily's comment at the clinic about the baby kicking whenever she heard his voice takes on a truly horrifying and sickening new meaning now. Detective Morales nodded grimly, his jaw tight with anger. "We found a hidden room in the basement, just as you suspected from what Emily told you. It appears to be where much of the abuse took place. There were cameras, recording equipment, and other items." Diane covered her mouth, stifling a choked sob, her body shaking with grief and rage. His bedroom contained hundreds of photographs of Emily. The detective continued, his voice heavy with disgust. "Some of them dating back several years. This has been ongoing for a very long time." "How could this happen?" Diane asked, her voice breaking with unbearable pain. "How could no one notice? How could I not know? Predators like Mark are incredibly skilled at isolation and manipulation," Ms. Miller from CPS explained gently, her voice filled with empathy. They gradually and systematically sever their victims' ties to all support systems, friends, family, even school. We'll have a much clearer picture once Emily feels able and ready to share her full statement. Detective Morales turned to Diane. Ms. Rivera, we need to understand how Mark managed to gain full custody of Emily. It might help us build an even stronger, irrefutable case against him. Diane wiped her eyes, her expression a mask of profound pain and regret. I'm not proud of what happened. After Mark and I divorced 10 years ago, I was a single mom, working long nights at a casino to make ends meet. We were struggling terribly financially. She drew in a steadying breath before continuing, her voice trembling. I started attending underground poker games, foolishly thinking I could stretch my paychecks and somehow give Emily a better life. But it quickly spiraled out of control into a devastating addiction. One night, the house was raided by the police, and that's when they found out I'd left Emily, who was just 7 years old at the time, home alone. Tears streamed down her face, a testament to her enduring guilt and sorrow. Mark seized the opportunity. He portrayed himself as the stable, responsible parent, the concerned father. The court, tragically, gave him full custody, and I was only allowed supervised visitation. Then, he moved to Santa Rosa and somehow managed to get a restraining order against me, claiming I was unstable and a bad influence on Emily. He systematically, cruelly isolated her from me, from everyone. Ms. Miller nodded sympathetically. It's an unfortunately common and devastatingly effective tactic. I've spent the last 3 agonizing years rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and I specifically moved to this neighborhood to be closer to her, Diane said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. I have a stable job now, a good apartment with a second bedroom already prepared and waiting for Emily. I've been saving every single penny I could to fight for custody again, but Mark relentlessly shut down every attempt I made to even reach her, to speak to her. Dr. Vasquez emerged from the examination room before anyone could respond, her expression cautiously optimistic. They all turned to her expectantly, holding their breath. Emily is stable, she reported, a collective sigh of relief filling the tense waiting room. The baby's heartbeat remains irregular, but we've started her on medication to help regulate that. We've also begun a course of steroid injections to accelerate fetal lung maturity, which is absolutely crucial in cases of severe IUGR like this. She's severely malnourished and is clearly showing signs of long-term stress and profound trauma. But physically, she should recover in time. And the baby? Diane asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes pleading for good news. We're monitoring the situation very closely, Dr. Vasquez said, her tone serious. The next 48 hours will be absolutely critical. The fall doesn't appear to have caused any placental abruption, which is indeed very good news, but the pre-existing conditions, the severe growth restriction and the persistent heart irregularities, remain deeply concerning. Can we see her? Dr. Evans asked, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Dr. Vasquez nodded. She's asking for her mother. And for you too, Dr. Evans. She says you saved her life. The hospital room was dimly lit, the steady, rhythmic beeping of monitors creating a strangely calming backdrop to the emotional turmoil. Emily lay propped up on pillows, and 4-line in her arm, and fetal monitors strapped securely across her swollen abdomen. Despite everything she had endured, the unimaginable horror she had faced, there was something undeniably different about her now, a new spark of resilience, of hope, in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The crushing weight of her terrible secret had finally been lifted. Diane approached her daughter's bedside, her steps tentative, almost hesitant, as if she were afraid Emily might somehow disappear if she moved too quickly. Emily, she whispered gently, taking her daughter's hand in hers. My brave, beautiful girl. Emily's eyes welled with fresh tears, but these were tears of relief, of reunion. Mom, she said, her voice stronger, clearer than it had been earlier. You came back for me. I never stopped trying to come back. My love, Diane assured her, perching carefully on the edge of the hospital bed. Your father, he made it impossible, but that's all over now. He can never, ever hurt you again. Dr. Evans stood respectfully at the foot of the bed, giving mother and daughter the private space they so desperately needed for their emotional reunion. Detective Morales and Ms. Miller from CPS waited patiently near the door, understanding the profound delicacy and importance of the moment. After a few precious minutes, Emily looked up at Dr. Evans, her gaze direct and filled with a gratitude that transcended words. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice soft but firm, "for believing me, for helping us." "You're the brave one, Emily," Dr. Evans replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You found the incredible courage to reach out for help, and that ultimately is what saved you and your baby." Detective Morales stepped forward, his expression gentle but professional. "Emily, I know this is incredibly difficult, but we need to ask you some questions to help us build our case against your father. Would that be okay with you?" Emily glanced at her mother, who squeezed her hand reassuringly, offering silent support. "It's your choice, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I'm right here with you, every step of the way." Emily nodded slowly, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze. "I want to tell the truth," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "All of it. Take your time, Emily," Ms. Miller said gently, her voice soothing and kind. "And if you need to stop at any point, for any reason, just say so." Emily took a deep, steadying breath and began to speak, her voice gaining confidence and clarity as she continued her harrowing account. "There was never any boyfriend," she confirmed, her words echoing what they already suspected. "My father, he's the father of my baby too." She described in painful detail how Mark had begun abusing her shortly after gaining full custody, how his cruelty had escalated over the years, how he had systematically and cruelly isolated her from the outside world, from any potential source of help or comfort. "He pulled me out of school, saying he would homeschool me, but there were never any real lessons, just enough superficial instruction so I could answer basic questions if anyone ever asked. The abuse had escalated relentlessly over the years, becoming more frequent, more violent. Whenever anyone came to the house, any visitors, he would lock me in the basement. There's a hidden room down there that he built himself. That's where most of it happened." Dr. Evans thought of the horrifying evidence the police had already found in that monstrous basement room and felt a fresh wave of nausea and revulsion wash over him. "When I got pregnant," Emily continued, her voice trembling slightly but her gaze unwavering. "He was angry at first, furious. He talked about forcing me to have an abortion, but then, suddenly, he changed his mind. He became strangely, possessively protective of the baby. He said it was ours." She shuddered visibly at the memory, the word ours tasting like poison on her tongue. "The baby started kicking a few months ago. I noticed she would kick whenever she heard his voice. It made me sick to my stomach. I hated that she responded to him, to his presence." Emily placed a protective, loving hand over her belly. "But it's not her fault. She's innocent in all of this. She didn't ask for any of this." "Of course she is, my sweet girl," Diane assured her, her voice filled with a fierce maternal love. "I started feeling really sick about 2 weeks ago," Emily explained, her brow furrowing at the memory. "Bad stomach pains, constant dizziness. At first, he completely ignored it, dismissed my pain, but when I could barely even get out of bed, he finally, reluctantly, decided to take me to a doctor. That's when we went to Dr. Evans' clinic." Detective Morales nodded, diligently taking notes, his expression grim. "The photographs you gave to Dr. Evans, Emily. How did you manage to get those? It was incredibly brave of you." "My father, he took pictures all the time," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He kept them in a box, hidden in his closet. I managed to sneak some of them out while he was in the shower this evening, just before we left for the clinic. I knew he would be out of the house to take us there, and it was my only chance. It's been a really long time since he let me go outside to see anyone. I didn't know what to do with the pictures, who I could possibly trust, but when Dr. Evans came to our house later that night, I thought maybe, just maybe, he could help me. You did exactly the right thing, Emily, Dr. Evans assured her, his voice filled with admiration for her incredible courage. Dr. Vasquez returned to check on Emily and to meticulously evaluate the fetal monitoring strips. The medication seems to be helping with the heart irregularities, she reported, a note of cautious optimism in her voice. And your own vital signs are stabilizing nicely, Emily. That's excellent news. What happens now? Emily asked, her gaze shifting uncertainly between the supportive adults in the room. Ms. Miller stepped forward, her expression kind and reassuring. You'll stay here in the hospital, Emily, until you're medically cleared to leave. After that, we'll need to determine the best and safest living situation for you and her baby. She's coming home with me, Diane said firmly, her voice unwavering, filled with a mother's fierce protectiveness. I've prepared for this for years. I have a room ready for her, savings set aside for her care, everything she could possibly need. Ms. Miller nodded, a gentle smile on her face. Given the extreme circumstances, Emily, that seems like the most appropriate and supportive placement. We'll need to conduct a routine home evaluation, of course, but as long as everything checks out, I don't foresee any issues whatsoever with you being placed in your mother's care. And what about my father? Emily asked hesitantly, the question hanging heavy in the air. He's in custody, Emily, Detective Morales assured her, his voice firm and resolute. Given the overwhelming evidence we've already collected, the photographs, the hidden room, your incredibly brave testimony, he'll be facing multiple felony charges: child abuse, sexual assault, incest, child endangerment, and likely more. He won't be getting out of prison for a very, very long time, if ever. Emily nodded slowly, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her face. Profound relief, deep sadness, and something akin to a burgeoning sense of closure. What about the baby? She asked, turning her gaze to Dr. Vasquez, her voice filled with a mother's nascent concern. Will she be okay? We're doing absolutely everything we can, Emily, Dr. Vasquez promised, her voice gentle but confident. The next few weeks will be crucial. We'll continue the steroid injections to help her lungs develop properly, monitor her heart very closely, and focus intently on improving your nutrition to give her the very best possible chance at a healthy life. I want to keep her, Emily said quietly, her words surprising everyone in the room with their quiet strength and unexpected maturity. I know I'm young, but she's not responsible for how she came into this world. I don't want her to suffer, ever, for what he did. Diane squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, her eyes shining with love and pride. We'll raise her together, my love, she promised, her voice thick with emotion. You, me, and your beautiful daughter. She'll be loved and protected, always and forever. As the night deepened, slowly giving way to the first faint hints of dawn, Detective Morales and Ms. Miller departed, promising to return later that day to continue their work. Dr. Vasquez completed her thorough examination of Emily and left a check on her other patients. Diane settled into the comfortable chair beside Emily's bed, unwilling to leave her daughter's side even for a single moment, her presence a constant source of comfort and strength. Dr. Evans prepared to leave as well, his professional duties for the night fulfilled, but his heart still undeniably heavy with the immense weight of everything he had witnessed, everything he now knew. Dr. Evans, Emily called out softly as he reached the door. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me, for seeing that something was terribly wrong when no one else did. He turned back to her, struck once again by the incredible, quiet resilience shining in her young face, a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit. I'm just so glad I could help, Emily. You did more than just help, Dr. Evans, Diane said, her voice filled with a profound gratitude that brought tears to his eyes. You saved them both. You saved them when everyone else, for years, simply looked away. As Dr. Evans drove home in the still, quiet hours of the early morning, the familiar streets of Santa Rosa deserted and peaceful, he reflected deeply on the tumultuous, life-altering events of the night. His difficult but ultimately necessary decision to follow his instincts, To push past established professional boundaries when a child's fundamental welfare and very life were clearly at stake had, in the end, made all the difference in the world. The neighborhood was eerily silent when he finally returned to his own home. The Hallen house, now an active crime scene, was starkly marked by official yellow police tape, its boundaries clearly delineated, a grim symbol of the darkness that had festered within its walls. Neighbors would undoubtedly wake to a changed street, a community irrevocably forced to reckon with the unimaginable horror that had existed silently and insidiously in their midst, unnoticed and unchallenged for far too many years. Dr. Evans entered his home, utterly exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but at long last, at peace with the difficult choices he had been forced to make. In the medical profession, the primary mandate was unequivocally clear. First, do no harm. But sometimes he now understood more profoundly than ever, doing good, truly doing good, required far more than just avoiding harm. It required decisive action, unwavering courage, and the profound willingness to see, truly see, what others, for whatever reason, often missed or chose to ignore. As he finally lay down to rest, his body aching with fatigue, Dr. Evans thought of Emily and her precious, unborn daughter, both innocent victims of unspeakable, monstrous cruelty, both now, thankfully with a real chance, a new beginning, a life free from fear and abuse. Their road to healing would undoubtedly be long and arduous, filled with challenges and pain, but they would not, he knew with certainty, have to walk it alone. Sometimes he reflected as sleep finally, mercifully claimed him, the most important diagnosis, the truly life-altering one, was the one that went far beyond mere medical symptoms and clinical observations. It was the one that recognized the deep, often hidden human suffering beneath the carefully constructed surface, the silent, desperate cries for help that often came in the subtle, easily overlooked forms of averted eyes, cryptic, unsettling words, and incredibly brave acts of desperate, last-resort trust. In the end, it wasn't just medical knowledge or clinical skill that saved lives. It was compassion, unwavering attention, and the profound, unwavering courage to act decisively and compassionately when others, for whatever reason, simply turn away. Thank you so much for joining us for this story. We hope it touched your heart and made you think. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more stories like this, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update from our channel. Your support means the world to us and allows us to continue bringing you compelling narratives. We appreciate each and every one of you.